this is Amy with Moxie Blooms and Flower Moxie, and today I'm going to show you how to build a bouquet using an armature. So what I'm going to use for this video will be a chicken wire egg, but there's other options if you wanted to use a holly chapel egg. This is a large, this is a medium, either one would work. Obviously this one would create a smaller bouquet because there's less egg real estate. So to get started, let me go over the material that we have. I have some peachy, kind of earthy colored cremones, white scoop scabiosa, white stock, Orlea, which is similar to Queen Anne's lace. We don't sell this, but they didn't have the Queen Anne's lace. We have some peachy spray roses, some shimmer roses, and then anthurium. So all of this you can buy on Flower Moxie, except for the anthurium, which we sell in bulk on Moxie Blooms. So the two colors that I'm working with would be pistache. Pistache is the one with like this peachy, blushy center. That's green. And then this one is Midori, which, what a wonderful name. So what I'm doing is recreating the bouquet that we made for our styled shoot for our Flower Moxie Glow Up. And I'll show you exactly how I did it. So some of the material's different, but the concept's the same, and we're using a very similar palette. Okay, so to get started, let's make this burrito. This is some Oasis chicken wire. Stay away from the silver stuff. This is about a 10 by 7. You can really control how big or small you want to make it. I used to get all large and in charge when I first started doing these, and then I just felt I was fighting with the chicken wire armature. So I've learned to be a little bit more conservative. So basically I'm making a burrito, and I try to kind of twist the ends together so it doesn't fall apart on me. And once you drive a few stems through, you're not really going to have a problem. So a lot of times, let's talk about the reason why you would do this instead of building in a spiral method. A spiral method is typically my go-to, just because if I can avoid using armatures, I probably will. But sometimes the look that you're wanting to create, you're going to fight with it, you're going to struggle with it, and that's what I felt when I went to make that bouquet for the styled shoot. So, okay, so we have basically a hollow egg, and this is about on par with the holly chapel, just so you can see it. The reason why I prefer the chicken wire is I can really control the size. If I need to scrunch it up at the end or push it in, then I can. This is very rigid, so you might prefer this, but I like a little bit more flexibility. Okay, it's always hard to get this started, but once you get going, you will like the control that you have. Now I'm going to tell you straight from the beginning, the stems are going to be like a messy bird's nest. It's not going to be this pretty spiral, and that's okay. Not everything can be a spiral. In the end of the day, I'm wanting to achieve that overall look and the overall shape. So I'm going to do anything I can to get there. So first, I have visually weighty items like this cremone. These spray roses are pretty visually weighty, shimmer roses, and then I have my dancers. So my dancers are going to be these anthuriums. I think this Orlea will be really nice, and this stock just gives me a little bit of movement and some linear shapes. Now if you notice, I'm not using any greenery, and that's okay. A lot of times with bouquets, you'll see me reach for greenery, but not every time. And what I'm noticing is bouquets and arrangements without greenery is increasing in popularity, which I'm okay with. I mean, I still love some greenery, but I am appreciating what I'm seeing. So let's give it a shot. All right, what are we gonna start with? Let's just start with something a little bit heavier. Let's bring in this peachy cremone. So we're gonna drive it through, and I'm gonna let it hang out very low. And at first, again, it's hard to get it started because you're holding on to the egg, you're trying to hold on to the stem, things are shaking, but it will start making more sense. When I get more stems in this, I change my hand placement and pretty much just hold on to the stems, not the egg. But yeah, let's get some disbursement. So they're already being a bit cross-threaded. If you notice, I have very clean stems. That's going to be super important. Trim off any notches, any leaves. You're only going to fight with it and it will take up the real estate within your chicken wire armature. So I'm focusing on, pointing it to outwards. So I'm thinking if the holder is walking down the aisle, I want to make sure and come down with it. So when I first did one, I just concentrated at the top and then I had a lot of mechanics to cover. So I think of that as I build. So I'm just going to drive a few in. I'm going to see what shape I have and then I'll make some adjustments. And I can change the placement. So I've already shifted to holding just the stems. And this is just hanging out as a separator. And I think that's what I didn't finish. Why would I choose to use this? Is because I want more air and space between my dancers and between my anthuriums. And if I were to build it in a spiral method, it would really start to come together. And I need these to hang out on their own. I don't want them to smush together. So that's why I couldn't achieve the spiral, which is why I reached for an armature. So I'm going to bury this one down. I can already tell I don't want these leaves. Okay, let's just start by getting some product in here. So I'm kind of buddying up my linear items. So these are some scoop scabiosa. They have a clear straw. I'm going to go ahead and leave it on because I don't want these to droop and the straw is clear. If I feel like I have one sticking out and I can see the straw, then I'll pull it down or remove it. But as a whole, I try to keep them in place. I'm not liking this spray rose here, I can already tell. So I'm going to adjust the placement. And this is something I have to do as a florist and that you will have to do as a DIYer. Just because you move something doesn't mean it was wrong. And I'm just trying to get some basic shapes and then I will start rounding things out. And let's bring in these scoop scabiosas. For me, when I'm building a bouquet, I really have to look in the mirror so I can kind of see in the monitors. But right now I'm just trying to get some disbursement. I'm trying to do some clustering with my colors. And then I'll look in the mirror and make the appropriate adjustments. There we go. See how this chicken wire is allowing these flowers to stay in place. The thing about the spiral is it all kind of falls in on each other as you're building, and then you sit and adjust it. But this is really just holding things apart, which is what I need in this moment. And I want the bouquet to come out a little bit, be a little bit more dimensional than just flat. So because I have this chicken wire, I can really drive things at an angle and pick up the stem. This cremone is a bit old, so I think we got the last of them at the wholesaler, so this one's a little bit shattery. It's okay, we can work with it. So I want this piece of white down here, but the stock is pouring out a little bit too much for me, so I'm going to come in and pinch it off. I often do this with stock, and I take off that top portion if it's getting a bit much. So again, I put the weightier things closer to the base, and I'm going to come in with the softer elements, the dancers, now that I have that foundation. And in the end, I'll come in with the anthurium. But I started out with the heaviest things, working down to the lighter things. So we're starting to really get that garden feeling to it, where it just looked like a big ball of peach and white at first. So that's why it's always best to wait before you get nervous. As a new florist, if I was building something and I looked in the mirror and it looked like crap, I was like, oh, this whole thing is gonna be terrible. I'm already like, this already looks bad. I was already getting discouraged, and I learned over time just to wait, to hold judgment. And that's really important in any creative process, especially with flowers. So I love that, like right here, I can kind of bend this chicken wire a little bit to pull it out. And this is something I really couldn't do with the egg. So I wanted some spray roses right here. Let me turn this around. This one little notch just makes it hard to do that. So that's why it's so important to have clean stems. Okay, let's raise this little dancer up. Okay, this is looking and feeling really bouncy. Obviously we could stop here, but we're gonna keep going because we don't have our sexy anthuriums in. Anthuriums are my new favorite flower, by the way. And I've been loving ranunculus for years, and I still love them, but I love the longevity of the anthurium. I love the shape, and then the colors. And then if you haven't seen the House of Stem anthuriums that we're selling, oh my gosh, let me cut off that notch. I think originally I was afraid that they weren't going to be soft enough, or it wouldn't feel bridal enough for me, but I think if you combine them with garden roses and these soft things, you'll definitely get that feeling. Okay, this is looking really good and bouncy, no greenery. Let's see, let's go ahead and start adding some anthurium. I'll start with the pistache, and yeah, the one thing I love, well, one of the many things I love, is they have such clean, firm stems. So I'm gonna sink this guy down a little bit. And I love this because it's just floating above. And the reason why I have other dancers is because if I had very solid things, and then I just added these anthuriums to like float above, it would feel weird. So it kind of needs a buddy so your eye flows with these like really sharp lines. And so that's where these little dancers kind of come into play. Let's see. And I like to observe what's the natural shape that's happening here. And so I want one kind of coming out here, looking in a different direction. I don't want them all forward facing. And so I really like what I have happening here. I might sink them down lower when I look in the mirror, but we can always do that. And this chicken wire is holding it all in place. So I have these, they're a little bit more appley green, and I'll take one in the middle. So it's getting a little bit tighter. I'm running out of chicken wire holes, and so I have to just move a little bit slower, and I adjust as I go. But see how these can kind of spin around? That's why this armature helps them just have a little bit more control. And I want them spaced out. I don't want them touching each other. Okay, I like what I have. I think I need to go look in the mirror. I might have too many. I feel like you could do less, but why do less when you can do more? And I love them so much. So let me go and take a look at this. I might need to make the heights a bit more dramatic. So it might mean, yeah, I feel like I might need to just pull them up a little bit more to make them a bit more front page. I mean, it just depends on the level of drama that you want with it, right? Okay, so I went and looked in the mirror. I made a few adjustments. When I'm working with another designer, I can't help but ask, like, what do you think? What do you see? Because it's a different vantage point. I will have looked at it for too long, and it's always helpful to have someone else kind of come in and say, okay, I feel like this is a hole. Maybe, you know, like Callie noticed this one was, you know, down at the same level. And so it was kind of touching that anthurium, and I thought maybe I should push it up or push it down, and she kind of felt like pulling it up a bit. So I wanted to show you this process of someone looking at it and adjusting of like what's weird about it. Is this weird?
No, that's a good like triangle there. Maybe pull this one off the tiny bit.
Yeah, it's getting kind of sunk. Down
a little bit.
So as a trained florist, Callie was really paying attention to if something was touching, if something was on the same plane, we would adjust it. And so that's one thing that I harp on a lot and talk about a lot is if you're not liking something, more than likely it's adjustments that you need to make. As a new florist, I've said this before, I would just put down the bouquet, take it apart, start all over. The problem with doing that is that you're overworking your product, and you can start like kind of tearing it down and compromising. Once I take this apart, put it back together, take it apart, put it back together, it starts looking chewy and kind of shoddy. So a lot of times it's adjustments. And so Callie would come over and she kind of notice if something's peeking down. That's one thing that I failed to do as a new florist, and every new florist makes this mistake. I would just pack stuff in, and not only did I use more product, but it was all like compact and tight. And I learned that, you know, if you can take it out and it doesn't change anything or it doesn't make it look better or worse, then it doesn't need to be there. So I probably have one cremone that's sunken down that's kind of supporting the other ones, but that's rare that I have just a lost one in there. So what I've come out with, let me square up to the camera, is it's bouncy. I've got my anthurium. I can make it a little bit more dramatic if needed. That's the great thing about this chicken wire. And so let's tie it off. So we've got absolute bird's nest happening here. So we've got to be a little bit more careful, because if we get it too tight, so if I like take a zip tie, ratchet it down, I'm gonna probably break some stems. But I think there's a better way that we can do this. So I'm gonna cut it a bit shorter. And what I'm gonna try here is the rubber band. That's where I find something strong, hook it, and wrap it around. So let's find a really strong stem. Let's go for a rose. I don't wanna do an anthurium. But basically I hook, that'll work, I have two. But I hook, oh, that might cross thread them a little bit. I hook one strong stem. So see how I have this rose stem hooked, and it's really, it's up high, close to the binding point. I take this rubber band, stretch it, wrap it around, and I hook the same stem. That way I have equal and opposing pressure on the same stem, so I'm not hopefully going to damage it. And this is still kind of loose, but I don't find that anything's sinking in. I don't think I need to pull it around twice, because again, stem's going in a bunch of directions, not in a safe space like it would be a spiral, and I don't want to you know, put undue pressure. So now we have this happening. For a client, I would try to cover this. So I would come in with some like mini carnations, tuck them in tight. The great thing is with this chicken wire, I can manipulate it still, so I'm kind of pushing it up into itself. If I had a greenery, or like a bouquet where I was using greenery, I would tuck in some greenery really tight. And I would talk to my client about it if she could kind of see it a little bit or feel it. I would really try to hide that as a florist if I was handing this off. But I would also explain to her, like, you know, this is how we built this. If you see a little chicken wire in there, that's what that's for. But, you know, you want to hide your mechanics from your clients. Just it's sharper. So at this point, yeah, I make any final adjustments. This is getting a little bit twisted, so I might need to go play around with this placement. But because it's in this chicken wire, it's not falling in on itself. Because I have the rubber band, there's enough, there's some grip to it, but looseness that I can still make these adjustments. So yeah, this is how I build a chicken wire bouquet. If you have any questions, leave it in the comments below. Be sure to visit our Instagram at Flower Moxie or Moxie Blooms, and come see us at flowermoxie.com or moxieblooms.com. Thank you.